All right, let's go on the record. If we hear static, we may ask the parties to mute that are participating. I think we're okay right now. Let's go on record. It's November 17th. It's 2020. Convened to consider our first case that was set for 8:30 this morning. It's a Columbus matter, and the case number is 20-0125. It deals with the Juniper School located on Charleston Avenue in this jurisdiction in Columbus's adjudication numbers noted on the docket. Let's have an introduction to the parties. We're beginning with Mr. Omis, and state your full name, spell your last name, so for our court reporter, and the capacity by which you're here representing the appellant. Do the same thing with the city building official and the city fire official. We'll have an oath administered and we'll get started. Go ahead, Mr. Omis.
Paul Omness, O-M-N-E-S-S. I'm an architect representing the Juniper School.
Okay, Ms. Ziegler.
Yes, Jennifer Ziegler, Juniper School Administrator.
Okay, and Ms. Resner.
Emily Rozier, R-O-E-S-S-E-R, and I am on the school board.
Thank you. Mr. Ghosh.
Ahmed Ghosh, G-H-O-S-H, Chief Building Official, City of Columbus.
Chief Sanders.
Battalion Chief Scott Sanders, Columbus, Ohio Division of Fire, Assistant Fire Marshal.
Okay, and we have on the list Lieutenant Fowler. Is he going to be participating, Chief?
He was, but he is being tested at the moment, so we'll take him off.
Okay. All right. No objection to proceeding then. Okay, Mr. Omis, and if the parties would stand, raise your right hand. Nick, would you administer the oath?
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
I do.
Okay, very good. Mr. Omis, you have the floor.
The nature of the case is related to providing handicap accessibility to an existing school. The existing building is a circa 50s, 60s church that has been converted into a daycare center. And it's a split level. That is, the lower level is below grade and the upper level is above grade. So you enter at grade, and then there's a flight of stairs to either main floor in what'll be the classroom area of the building. I think the issue pertains to providing accessibility to those floors, and we find that the cost of it is disproportional to the overall project budget. So the nature of the renovations in here were to provide fire-rated walls and doors as required in education, and then provided a full addressable fire alarm smoke detection system throughout the space. And the fire alarm smoke detection system constituted the lion's share of the cost of construction to the project. I think what the solution that maybe the city would like is to provide platform lifts, at least to the floors, but their cost is disproportional to the overall work. And there are existing lifts to and from the different levels, but they require a transfer. That's it in a nutshell.
Okay, let's questions of Mr. Omis at this point in time, or do we want to hear from Mr. Ghosh?
Yes, Mr. Chair, this is Paul Began. Mr. Omis, when did the Juniper School purchase this church building?
Jennifer, can you answer that one?
Yes, this is Jennifer. We have not purchased the building yet. We are currently leasing the building. We were due to purchase the building last spring, and then COVID hit, and our enrollment was unsteady. So we halted the purchase, and we hope to purchase this spring. But the church is okay with us going forward with renovations so that we can open.
And was that Mrs. Ziegler or Miss Rozier?
That was Jennifer Zegler.
Thank you. Okay.
Has the Juniper School been operating in this location for some time? Anyone? How long is it?
This is Jennifer again. We have been operating as a homeschool program, and we would wish to move our early childhood center from its former location to this location so that we can service more children and families.
Okay, and so I will ask Mr. Omnis or either of you, on your study and or assessment of this move, did you not identify this particular issue as something that needed to be addressed?
I have to leave that one to you, Jen. I was not part of that process.
At the time, we were advised that the chairlifts would be serviceable for what we needed. We were unaware that it was going to be such an issue.
Okay, no further questions, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Any other questions of Mr. Omnis or Ms. Ziegler?
Yeah, I have one, Carol. Where exactly are the chairlifts located? What stairwell?
Could you repeat that?
Where are the chairlifts located?
In the stairwells,
In which one? All of them?
all of them.
Excuse me, this is Jennifer Zegler again. They are in the main entrance to the building.
Yeah, they serve both.
There are 3 stairwells, and they're in the main stairwell entrance.
Sorry.
Okay, we got some loud noise going on. Okay, Mr. Ghosh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We, of course, can speak in support of this appeal. Number one, as Mr. Began was asking, this is a complete change of occupancy. Number two, the code doesn't allow a chairlift simply because if somebody in a wheelchair transfers at the bottom of a flight of stairs, they're up at the top of the flight, but the wheelchair's down below. So, and a lot of people, depending on the severity of their condition, find that transfer from a wheelchair to another chair or to a automobile very, very difficult. So, and it is a change of occupancy, and the codes in 3411 is pretty specific. So we can't speak in support of this appeal.
Okay, Chief Sanders.
Columbus Fire believes with building department and Mr. Ghosh, the code is cleared, no chairlift with a change of occupancy. Columbus Fire would be opposed to this.
Okay, questions of either Battalion Chief Sanders or Mr. Ghosh from members of the board?
Mr. Chair, to Mr. Ghosh, would the Columbus Building Department be open to the possibility of a temporary occupancy permit with a delayed final occupancy to allow a little bit more time for this particular school to find the funds to do a proper handicap lift?
Mr. Chair, to Mr. Began, yes, we will be open to that suggestion if that's what the board finds a reasonable time frame, that is.
Okay, any other questions of Mr. Ghosh or the chief? Mr. Omnis, you want to, do you have anything further at this point in time to add?
No, I do not. Jennifer, would those terms be suitable for you?
Yes, I just would like to make sure that I understand. So we would be allowed to open and have a set time to install proper chairlifts. Is that correct?
That's how I read it.
Gentlemen, is
Yeah,
that is the answer yes on that? Is that, Paul, is that?
Yeah, and that's what I am thinking, but I think that I'd be thinking a short term, maybe 12 months, something along those lines to allow you to do some additional homework, find some additional funds, and install the lift.
Neil, where are you on this?
I would agree to that as long as it didn't exceed the 12-month period.
And Brad?
Yeah, I was thinking along those lines. It's an existing building, and they're repurposing it, so it's probably a good use for it. And unfortunately, you've got this stairway issue. So, yeah, if they're in agreement with it, I would support that we give them an extension of 12 months to comply.
Chip?
I'd support it. I'd go as far out as 24 months, but I don't know.
Jennifer, what time period seems suitable for you?
Was that a question?
Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead.
This is Jennifer. Yes, if we could have 18 months, I think that would be sufficient and very generous. Thank you. Due to COVID, our enrollment has been a little bit in flux, so any additional time would be much appreciated.
Okay, well, I know where Chip falls on that. I guess it's to Brad and to Neil and to Paul as to whether they can find their way to 18 months.
Yeah, that's fine.
I'm good with 8. I'm good with 18 months.
Okay. And then Neil and Paul.
The cost of the chairlift. The cost of the chairlift is $25,000 approximately. Correct?
Yes.
I would still rather see it held at 12 months personally, but if all the others are in favor of 18, that would probably sway me.
No, Mr. Chair, this is Paul Began. I think I would be in with the 12 months. Again, this should have been part of the due diligence for the selection of this particular site. Yes, it is a private school as well too. It is open to the public, and accessibility is not just for people in a wheelchair, right? One of the teachers could break their leg, and now they don't have a means to get in, and simple things like that. So accessibility is less to do with people being able-bodied as allowing universal access to the general public, and this is a school, so I would want to keep it at 12 months.
I agree.
Okay, so it sounds like on the straw poll though, we've got maybe 3 that could find their way to 18, 2 that are dug in on 12. Chip and Brad, I guess I'd ask this in sunshine, is are Neil and Paul's positions compelling, or you want to stay with 18 months?
Well, I mean, we are in a pandemic, and things are not normal, and I'm not sure if that helps or hurts the school in complying with this. But I think under the situation, I would go either way, I guess. But I would be in favor of giving them a little bit more time to apply.
I'm in favor of the 18 months.
Okay.
So it falls to you, Carl.
Well, no, I said that I was okay with a longer time period, but that probably means that the motion's got to come from you, Chip.
All right.
I entertain a motion. And real quickly, Mr. Omnis, anything further?
No, I just would add that in this time, it's some trades are really booked, and I would give the owner as much window as possible to accomplish the task. And
Okay, Mr. Ghosh, anything further to come from Columbus City?
We will be, thank you, Mr. Chair, we'll be okay with 12 or 18 months as you decide.
Okay, anything further from Columbus Fire, Chief?
No, nothing additional. We will
Okay.
be satisfied anyway.
Okay, all right, I'd entertain a motion then.
I think we would have to do a condition, and I think that the condition would probably read, this variance is conditioned upon a permanent means for accessible access be provided to the satisfaction of the building official within 18 months of the date of this order.
Okay, I would agree with that. Mr. Ghosh, is that language acceptable?
Yes, Mr. Chair, Mr. Chair to Mr. Began, should we put something in there, Mr. Began, that says that it has to comply with 3411.8.3 for platform lifts, or should we keep that open to the design team?
And so I put it to the satisfaction of the building official, Mr. Ghosh, because they may decide that they want to do an elevator, or you know, I don't want to put them in if they find, hey, you know, looking at this plan, we have this stacked janitor closet, which we could put a Lula in there, and that would be an easier way to do it. That way it might, you know, whatever they come up with. So I don't want to necessarily limit it by saying it has to be a chairlift.
Understood. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Omnis, so the condition is stated, proposed condition is stated by Mr. Began. Is that acceptable?
It is.
Okay. Paul, is there a need to read that again?
Yeah, it's just a condition. Variance is conditioned upon a permanent means for accessible access be provided to the satisfaction of the building official within 18 months of the date of this order.
Okay, now I'd accept a motion.
Mr. Chair, for Board of Building Appeals case number 20-0125, the appellant is North Baptist Church for the premises Juniper School at 76 Charleston Avenue, Columbus, Ohio, 44214. The appellee is Amit Ghosh, building official for the City of Columbus Building Department, and adjudication order number A/O 2020-017. I move to grant the variance subject to the condition previously read into the record and noting the no objection of the chief building and fire officials.
Okay, that motion's been made. Is there a second?
Second, this is Brad.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Nay.
That's Neil. Okay. All right, so the variance is granted with that 18-month caveat proviso on a 4-to-1 basis. Mr. Omnis, anything further to come from the appellant?
No, sir.
Mr. Ghosh and or Chief Sanders, anything further to come on behalf of the city?
No, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. All right, very good. Okay, thank you. We stand adjourned on this case. I do have an email from Susan that the parties are present for the 9 o'clock, the Germantown case. Let's just take a second. I just want to fill up my cup of coffee, and we'll go off the record for a second, Nick, and then we'll call the 9 o'clock case, assuming we have all the parties.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I know. I'm actually getting used to going more road.
May I ask a question? This is Canton on the phone.
Oh, okay.
What time is the Canton case coming on? Because all I've got is an invitation from 8:30 to noon.
Yeah, the actual notice was for 9:30 a.m.
Okay.
There's one case before you, and then they'll get started.
Yeah, I'm not trying to rush it, but if I can step away and do some other things, I'm going to go ahead and do that and be back on the phone at 9:30.
That's fine. I'll let the chair
Does that work for you?
I believe Fire's on the phone as well. Is that correct, Chief?
Yeah, is Chief Carafelli on?
No. Oh, I'm sorry, not on Canton. I apologize. I'm looking at Germantown. Is the Germantown parties here? Are we still waiting for Scott Young?
Chief Aldred's here.
Okay, thank you, Chief. I think we're still waiting for Mr. Doddrich or Doddrich. If you can hold on for a minute, because if Scott Young does not join shortly, they'll probably go ahead and call your case since everybody's here for Canton.
Yeah, everybody's here from Canton, so we're good. So I'll stay on the line.
Okay, let's see which case they pull first.
Yay.
But
Thank you.
Scott Young is supposed to be joining, but he hasn't yet.
Okay. I'm back. I'm gonna mute back out.
Yeah. Carl?
Yes.
We're still waiting on Scott Young for the Germantown case, but I do believe the Canton case is ready to go.
Maybe we could, you're telling me that the Canton case can go?
The Canton case, yes. I believe Mr. Peppers is here.
Well, if we have all the parties and they're willing to advance it a half hour, absolutely, that's fine. But we got to, we
The
better,
building officials here. I'm just waiting on Scott Young for the Germantown.
okay. Well, let me ask, Mr. Peppers, are you online?
Yes, I'm online.
And then who's going to appear with you?
So myself, the owner's rep, Vince Lance.
Okay.
And from Altman Hospital, Scott Crescents.
Okay, and are Mr. Crescents and Mr. Lance on?
They are correct.
Okay, very good. And is Mr. Dodovich on?
Yes, sir.
Okay, let me ask you here before I call the case. Anybody have any ill will towards starting 32 or 33 minutes early?
That works.
Okay, very good. Okay, then we're going to call it. We're going to advance our docket. Call a case that was set for 9:30, and recognizing it's now 9. So, with the consent of the parties, it's a Canton jurisdiction. It's case number 20-0127. It deals with the Altman Hospital located in that jurisdiction, and that jurisdiction's adjudication number is noted on the docket. I understand that we have Anthony Peppers, who's the architect, who is present, Scott Crescents, and Vince Lance, all representing the appellant or in a capacity to represent the appellant. We have the CBO on the phone or online, Mr. Dodovich. Would each of you quickly state your full name, spell your last name, and then the capacity by which you're here, and I'll have Nick administer the oath, and we'll get started.
Hey, my name's Anthony Peppers. I'm the project architect representing Altman Hospital, last name Peppers.
Vince Lance, owner's rep. Last name is Lantz.
Scott Cressens, Altman Hospital, Executive Director of Facilities and Construction. Last name Cressens, Crescenze.
Thank you. And our building official?
John Dodovich, Dodovich, Chief Building Official, City of Canton.
Okay, very good. If each of you would stand, raise your right hand. Nick, would you administer the oath, please?
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Do so affirm.
Okay, very good. Mr. Peppers, are you going to begin? Mr. Peppers, you're muted. Oh, you're still muted.
There we go. Okay, sorry about that.
Okay.
Okay. So we are looking for a variance for a 2-hour fire barrier that separates the existing hospital from the new connectors that are being constructed as a part of the new building. The existing hospital is an I2 3-hour rated exterior wall. The new building is pretty much it's a low volume 2B construction, fully sprinklered, and the connectors are pretty much they're intended for low volume traffic, and they will basically service patients who are seeking additional services beyond what they are intending to, the treatment that they're intending to engage in when they arrive at the new building. So currently, that's very helpful. Thank you. Is it possible that I can control the screen? I do have the documents available that we could walk through and look at, if that's helpful.
Paul, you're muted. Paul, you're still muted.
I'm sorry. If you could share your screen, I can put it up there.
Okay. Let's see. Let's see if I can do this here. What the fuck? Sorry, bear with me 1 second. I had it open and it's closed. There we go. Okay, thank you. So thank you, appreciate it. Your time. So what we're looking at in this view here is this is the ground floor master plan of the hospital. What's outlined in red is the existing building, and what's outlined in blue is our new addition. Well, first off, can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I can.
Okay. So what's shown here is a staff connector and a public connector, and this basically shows the limited amount of area in which this new building is coming in contact with the existing building. The connectors aren't framed into the existing building. They're separated by 2-hour rated expansion joints that would have the same equivalent rating as the fire barrier. As I said, they serve the purpose of providing access to extended care beyond the destination services within each building. And the volume of traffic would be minimal and just limited to those looking for additional care that happens, outside of this building that they would be seeking in the existing building. So, let's see. The initial plan review for these drawings was issued in February 20th, and we had a response that came back that suggested that the fire barrier may not be sufficient. And like everyone else, COVID hit and we weren't able to get a meeting scheduled with the city until the 21st of April. After we presented that fire barrier to the city officials, we left with an understanding that it was sufficient. And then we didn't submit our drawings until the 19th of August. That suggestion that fire barrier wasn't sufficient enough came back once again, and so we basically responded in writing that we would be pursuing a variance in order to get approval for the two-hour fire barrier. We've been sharing and speaking with the building official in regards to this issue, and we have proposed some upgrades to the fire suppression and notification systems on each side of the fire barrier in both the existing building and the new building that would, instead of using general sprinkler coverage and the general fire suppression systems, we would propose a more pointed and, directly applied additional protection to the fire barrier. And I know I sent supporting documents that basically showed it in plan, and here on the screen what you're seeing is a representation of what we're anticipating in order to provide these upgrades to the fire suppression systems in order to basically provide a more pointed and a more engaging suppression that protects the fire barrier between the two buildings. So this would include sprinkler head distribution increase. This would include smoke detection system directly adjacent to either side of the fire barrier. This would include side sprinklers in the pockets to cover the area that's outside of the general ceiling. It would also include turning the sprinkler heads up and providing sprinklers in the plenum above the ceiling, just to maximize the coverage for any water distribution from the sprinklers along that barrier wall. We'd also be increasing the doors. I think they're required at 90 minutes. We would be increasing the door to 120 minutes, and the doors would be on magnetic hold opens. One thing to point out is these locations where we're engaging the building with the connectors, they're not exits. They're basically just general circulation. So we wouldn't have any signs pointing towards these points, these doors, in order for exiting. They're not considered exits.
Can I ask, while you're on that question, the life safety plans do show egress pass through those doors. Why is that?
It's showing egress paths away from the doors, so it's not showing egress passing through the doors.
Can you pull up your life safety plan and explain to me what those lines are then, or that show the direction of egress travel?
Yes. So the lines represent, if you're standing at these doors, you're moving in this direction. So it's basically determining the travel distance of exit from those doors to the actual exit. So this is not an egress path going from this connector into the existing building.
How about the second floor?
So second floor is showing an egress path going from the door in this direction, and it's showing egress paths for the existing building starting at that point and going in this direction. So we're not, at no point are we showing egress continuance through those doors.
Okay.
Okay. Mr. Peppers, I'm not trying to cut you off, but there were a couple questions there, so you can proceed.
Oh, just, the final point I'd like to, we have been communicating with the city officials and have presented these options. to Mr. Dodovich.
Okay, any further questions of Mr. Peppers at this time?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I do have, I guess I need to have an understanding why you can't make it a firewall. Why you're insistent and want to go through all these efforts to make it a fire barrier. What advantage does that give you? What's the hardship? Why can't you do a firewall as required?
Well, the primary hardship here, constructability wise, is there's an elevation difference between the existing building and the new building of 3 feet 11 inches, and we have an accessible route that is moving through the connector. And what happens is right now we're actually at the limit where that ramp it stops at the existing building and it stops just inside of the new building. If we end up having a firewall, we would probably need to flatten that out in order to get a 5-foot flat surface on either side of the firewall, probably increasing the length of that ramp by roughly 10 feet. And that would bring our ramp 10 feet into the building and would require us to do a lot of both restructuring of the connector and connections of the connector in the new building, as well as trying to find routes for MEP services now, because we've created a pinch point and can't get any ductwork through into the connector below.
I think you're gonna have to show us a section that explains that, because
Sure.
I can get it, but I'm an architect.
Okay.
I want to make sure that the rest of the board understands what you're talking about.
Okay.
Just telling us, hey, we want to do a fire barrier and we want to do all this stuff doesn't really explain the whole situation. So.
Understood.
Okay, any other questions of Mr. Peppers at this time? Okay, Mr. Dodovich.
Now, I would like Mr. Peppers to be able to show us a section, Mr. Chair, that explains in more detail what he's talking about.
Okay. So this is our new building here. That's the exterior wall of the new building. This is the exterior wall of the existing building. And so there's 3 feet 11 difference between the finished floor and the existing building and the finished floor in the new building. And so we have an accessible ramp here that has to flatten out and continue down to the existing building. If we end up putting a firewall in the connector, that's going to add an additional 10 feet to flatten out on either side of the firewall to maintain the accessible route. So that's going to take our ramp and pull it further into the building. And we're going to have a pinch point here where we're trying to bring in ductwork. We're trying to bring in our MEP services into the connector to service the floor below. So I think it brings our ramp almost back to this point. Yeah, it brings our ramp significantly into the building.
So kind of what can you tell me what stage of construction this facility is in? Because again, to me, it looks like some better planning and about how this works would have made it that you could do what you needed to do. And it's like, so I'm trying to understand, okay, on paper, yeah, that makes it do that. Move the building a little bit or adjust your height differences between floors and you're done. So I need to know why now. Again, if this thing's already done and constructed and you're stuck, that's one thing. If it's, oh, we got to do some redesign, that's a different thing.
So, yeah, I mean, technically construction has not started on the project at this time. We were anticipating that instead of making those those changes to the drawings, that it's possible that we would be granted a variance in order to provide protection that's equivalent to or acceptable for a fire barrier as opposed to putting in the firewall.
Mr. Peppers, this is Chip Welch. I have a question. What is the, or why is the addition designed at a different height than the existing building? I mean, why were they not on the same grade?
So let me let Vince Lance answer that question. When I came into the project, these were established.
So part of that, the addition is at a higher grade because of flooding that does happen in this area, drainage that's outside of the hospital's control. And in that basement area, that has been a constant concern, as well as the existing building has different floor-to-floor heights. It's an older building. This is a cancer center that requires higher in a modern building that requires more interstitial space. So that is initially what set that ground floor in the hospital is at a different grade than everything else, where we would be connecting to.
Nick, that was Mr. Lance.
Yeah, sorry, that's Vince Lance. Yep.
Okay. I grew up in Canton, so I'm trying to remember this site being a swamp or drainage issues.
It's if it helps, it's Tuscarawas is just north of this, and that all drains south, which is where that hospital is, and there is an ED department that has had some issues in the past.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions of the appellant? Hearing none. Mr. Dodovich?
Yes, sir. So give you a little background, Rito Alvarez and I have reviewed this a number of times. There are some site constraints as well that figure into this in terms of the size of their building addition. And I won't say building addition, but their cancer center. We saw the connectors as much more that of convenience than a necessary part of an egress component. The upgrades to the fire suppression system, we were comfortable that they were going to be good with what they were doing, and we would support their appeal. But certainly defer to the board, but we would support the appeal of a fire barrier and then the enhanced systems, and then making sure that this is not a component of egress out of the building, but this is more for convenience between the two facilities, the two operations of the two facilities. That's how we saw it. We do recognize there's some real technical difficulties that they are dealing with. And one of them is the constraint of the site itself, the site plan itself. So,
okay, very good. Questions of the building official, members of the board? Okay, hearing no questions. Thoughts, comments?
I do have another question for Mr. Peppers. Talk a little bit about these doors. Are these doors on hold opens? How do these doors operate?
Yeah, that's correct. So the doors are basically, they're on magnetic hold opens, and they would disengage when an event is triggered. So when the fire detection system detects fire, those doors would close. And as I said, we would increase the doors to 120 minutes, so they're equivalent to that of the fire barrier.
Are there two separate fire alarm systems?
There are two separate fire alarm systems.
Activation of either fire alarm system will trigger the release of the doors?
Mr. Peppers?
Yes, there are two fire alarm systems, and the activation would trigger the release of the doors of either system.
Maybe I missed it. Do we have anybody from Canton Fire on the call?
Mr. Chair, I was going to say that we Rito and I have reached out to Canton Fire, spoke with Captain Page, although this is under Captain Carafelli's jurisdiction in terms of the fire inspection, but we also engaged Inspector Winkart. We had a discussion with Page and Winkart. They had a discussion with Carafelli. My apologies, Kenton is working on augmented schedules right now owing to the pandemic, so getting a hold of people is sometimes a little bit more of a telephone game. But we're all on board with the modifications that we made.
So we'd be able to represent no objection from the fire official?
Yes, you can.
Let me ask more specifically then, has Canton Fire been involved in the discussions regarding this issue?
They were involved with the outcome of the discussion, not the process of the discussion.
You might have to clarify for me. You guys decided here's what you want to do. You're fine with it, and you wanted to call them to say, are you guys on board, or are they fully vetted and understand the situation, what's going on?
I believe they fully vetted and understand the situation. Not usually, Scott Winkart is very thorough in his approach, and he reports back to both Captain Page and Captain Carafelli. So I would say he's very well versed and understands the situation completely. I mean, from a fire perspective.
Does Canton Fire normally review plans submitted to the building department and provide comment?
Yes, they do on a regular basis. Yeah, when it's basically a ground up construction, yes, they do, and even some tenant improvements. So yes, they do.
So have they had the opportunity to review these plans?
Yes.
And you received no comments?
I've got no comments back from them, no. So we have an adjudication on it, but I have no comments from them.
Hey, Paul, couldn't we put a condition in a letter of no objection from the fire official?
Yeah, Neil, I mean, obviously you could tell from my line of questioning, a letter of no objection is okay if I'm ensured that the fire department, they sat down with the fire department, they explained that what is required, that they do not want to provide what's required by the code, and they have alternate systems. So unless we specify exactly that we want the fire department letter of no objection to speak to this specific items, again, that's a difference. I mean, if
right.
going to Canton Fire, say, hey, our hospital wants this variance, are you guys okay with it? That's one thing.
We want the no objection
to do that.
We want the no objection from the fire department to be on an informed basis.
Correct.
Yeah, I don't think that wouldn't be a problem. So okay. We discussed firewall. We discussed the fire separation. They're familiar with the site. They're familiar with the plan. So there wouldn't be a problem there.
Okay, Chip, where are you on this?
I think I support the variance with the letter from the fire department.
Okay, and Brad? Brad, you're muted.
Thanks. I guess I have background noise. According to the building official, they have, and the architect and the owner, their site constraints causing the difference in the elevation that requires a ramp, and maybe why they can't move the buildings further apart. Based on that, I would be in favor of providing a variance with, I think, the condition we were talking about, that the fire department has no objection or has reviewed the plans and is in agreement.
Okay, and then Chip's already commented. Neil?
I'm in favor of the variance, but I also would like the proposed alternative conditions put in on it, and that may help Cat Fire with their letter of no objection.
Okay, and then Paul, I sense you're you're along the same lines as Neil and you might need some time.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of pieces, parts that they are proposing to add additional protection to this area, and I think that those need to be documented as conditions as part of the variant. So it will take a few minutes to put them all together.
Okay, so Mr. Peppers, Mr. Dodovich, we're going to go off the record, let our architect member try to work on crafting something, and then we'll reconvene. We'll vet those with both of you and see where we go. Is anything further right at this time, or can we go on recess? All right, we're going to go on. Nick, we're off the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, Mr. Chair, so I apologize for the delay here. There's quite a bit to write down here. Let me get these put up on the screen so everybody can take a look at them.
Yep, and Nick, let's go on record.
Okay. Okay, let me know if everybody can see those up on the screen.
Yeah, it's a little tiny, unless they can. Mr. Peppers, can you see those on the screen? Mr. Dodovich, can you see those?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
You'll have to scroll. I cannot see past number 9, or I can't see number 9, but.
Well, he's going to read those. If you take a look at them, then he's going to read them.
Great.
And what I'd like, Mr. Dodovich, if while you were taking a look at them, if there's any other additional requirements which were not presented during testimony that you would like to see added on there, if you want additional, fire extinguishers or anything like that I haven't listed, please let me know at the end of these, okay?
We'll do it.
This variance is conditioned upon the following. Number 1, both connector structures shall provide a 2-hour rated fire barrier adjacent to the hospital building on all floors. The fire barrier shall extend a minimum of 10 feet from the exterior wall of the hospital. Number 2, all penetrations and opening protectives through the 2-hour fire resistance rated fire barrier shall be designed and installed in accordance with the Ohio Building Code Chapter 7, as well as being maintained in accordance with the Ohio Fire Code. Number 3, additional automatic sprinkler system heads shall be provided on both sides of the connector structure to the satisfaction of the building and fire officials. Additional automatic sprinkler system heads shall be provided in the ceiling plenum spaces and side wall spaces to the satisfaction of the building and fire officials. Number 4, doors between the connector structures and the hospital shall be rated to provide a 2-hour fire rating. These doors will be on electronic hold opens. The fire alarm system from both buildings shall be interconnected such that the activation of either fire alarm will release the doors into a closed position. Number 5, the above requirements shall be listed as a special condition on the certificate of occupancy by the building official. Number 6, the above requirements shall be maintained as required systems utilizing the Ohio Fire Code and adopted Nfpa standards. Number 7, a letter of no objection shall be submitted by the fire official to the Board of Building Appeals and the chief building official before the construction permit is issued. The letter of no objection shall provide specific reference to the items of the variance, including agreement with the conditions herein. Number 8, the chief building official shall forward a copy of any certificate of occupancy to the fire department having either emergency response or fire prevention responsibility. And number 9, this variance is granted based on the use, construction, occupant load, project area, and level of activity identified on the approved construction documents, including the maintenance of all building systems and any conditions required herein.
Okay, again with Mr. Peppers. Questions, comments? Maybe muted.
Yeah, I have no questions.
Are those proposed conditions as stated satisfactory?
Yes, they are. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Dodovich?
Paul, quick question for you. Do you believe it's just self-evident that the exit notification doesn't directs them away from this area as opposed to direct them through this area? Because that was one of the things that was very important to us, that we weren't going to be exiting through this at all. I realize that's the life safety plan, but all exiting notification, I think, should direct them away from this if it doesn't already. I can't tell you that it does. So.
What we can do, Mr. Dodovich, if you'd want, and let me take a second to do it, but add another condition that would state something to emergency notification and signage shall direct exiting out a different pathway to the satisfaction of the building official.
I think that would satisfy me perfectly and give me some discretion in the field for when I walk.
That's exactly what I wanted to do.
Yeah. Yep, that'd be great. Thank you.
Okay,
Please
give me a second. What I will do then is add another condition.
Okay. We'll go off the record 1 second there.
Okay, Mr. Chair.
Okay, back on, please.
So what I'm going to do is take previous condition number 9 and make it condition number 10, and then add a new condition number 9 that reads, emergency notification and exit signage shall direct egress away from the connector structures to the satisfaction of the building and fire officials.
Okay, Mr. Peppers, is that additional condition satisfactory?
Yes, it is.
And Mr. Jones?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'd entertain a motion.
Yes, Mr. Chair, for Board of Building Appeals case number 20-0127, the appellant is Altman Hospital for the premises Altman's Timken Family Cancer Center at 2600 6th Street Southwest, Canton, Ohio 44710. The appellee is John Dodovich, building official for the City of Canton Building Department, and adjudication order number 2020-027-3. I move to grant the variance subject to the conditions previously read in the record and noting the no objection of the building official.
Okay, that motion's been made. Is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chair, Chip Welch.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, the variance is granted with those 10 conditions on a unanimous basis. Mr. Peppers, anything further to come before the board?
No, I thank you very much for your time this morning.
Thank you. And Mr. Dodovich, anything further to come before the board?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, thank you. Nothing else.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, man.
Okay. That case, thank you. That case is adjourned. So we can consider our 9 o'clock Germantown case right now, or does anybody on the board need a break? Okay. Let's call the case that we deferred earlier. It's a Germantown matter. It's case number 20-0128, and it deals with the premises located at 313 South Main Street in Germantown, Ohio. And that jurisdiction's adjudication is noted on our docket. Let's have an introduction of the parties, beginning with the appellate representatives. I do understand we have Ben Mazer that is going to be on, and Allison Brait. But let's go ahead and let's walk through the population of appellant representatives. State your full name, spell your last name, and the capacity by which you're here. We'll also do the same thing with the CBO, Mr. Young. I'll have an oath administered and we'll get started.
This is Andrew Elliott, architect representing the mill and Miss Allison Brait.
Thank you. Mrs. Brait?
I'm sorry, this is Benjamin Mazer. Last name is spelled M-A-Z-E-R, representing Shree Mill and Miss Brait.
Okay. And you're appearing for Chris Connor?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And so the only person I didn't hear was Allison Brait. Is she present?
She is muted.
Ms. Brait, you may be muted.
Paul, you're muted too.
You're muted too, Paul.
You're all muted.
Yes. If you're on the phone, you need to type in *26 to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Allison Brait, correct? Is that correct? Ms. Brait?
She muted herself again.
Yes.
Okay, just
and
stay
we do ask those of you that are on the phone and also watching online to listen on the phone, because the online is delayed probably close to 10 seconds.
Okay, and Mr. Young?
Yes, Scott Young.
Okay. All right, if each of you would stand, raise your right hand. Nick, would you administer an oath?
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Okay, well, Mr. Elliott, you were muted, but yeah, we got, okay. Very well, oath's been administered. Mr. Elliott, are you going to proceed?
Yes, sir, I'll get started. So just to give a little bit of background information, I'm going to go ahead and just do a quick presentation, share my desktop screen, just because it's easier this way. Can everybody see that? Everybody following?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So the project, it's in design, is to install or administer R2 occupancy on the second, third floors. The existing conditions, it's an old mill, 1845. It's rather small, for, it's 700 square foot. So in 2018, the owner changed the occupancy from, it was R2 throughout all three floors, and it changed it to A2 on the first floor only, which negated all occupancy on the second, third floor. So that was the case, and it was an understanding that she may go back and get R2 on the second and third floor later on, or change occupancy so that she could use those second and third floors in the future. So we have that certificate of occupancy A2 signed and dated 6/13/2018. That's where it stands today. Owner has requested a design to integrate R2 residential occupancy on the second and third floors. That's where I come in. As we know, R2 occupancy on second and third floors requires sprinkler system. So got a cost for that. It was rather high. The owners asked if there was any other alternate reads, and that's where OBC Chapter 34 came into play. Just to give a little bit of background, since this is an old historic mill, they didn't want to change a whole lot of the look of the structure. So trying to keep that in mind, and also didn't want to break the bank. So the design features for this project included Chapter 34 compliance alternatives to achieve safe and efficient design. So those design features included separation of occupancy, smoke alarms throughout, and a second means of egress by the stair. All this to overcome the requirement to sprinkler the building. So the discrepancy came working with the Germantown building officials on section 3412.6.9, the fire alarm systems. Their ruling was that there was none. And as I disagreed, just because, and I'll show you in a minute. But so meeting the mandatory R2 scores, safety scores, is virtually impossible with that ruling because it gave a -10 for a none. So we're not going to be able to meet it. So even though the building would have been in full compliance with 907, the fire alarm system and smoke alarm, it would still receive a -10. So with that, what I believe would be the correct ruling, and is what we are appealing, it meets and exceeds fairly well. So the background information on that, the code information per 907, the fire alarm, we go to the R2 occupancy for manual fire alarm system. We do not meet any of these requirements for dwelling units. And where we do install smoke alarms, the alarming systems are applicable in smoke alarms for R2 occupancy. And all of these are included as required and are interconnected in the dwelling per the dwelling units. So we are in compliance fully with OBC 907 fire alarm detection systems. So just want to jump into NFPA 72.
Any fire alarm system on the ground floor?
We're not changing the ground floor. That's
I understand that, but is there any fire alarm system on the ground floor?
There's smoke
because
detector.
section 907 has fire alarm systems throughout the entire building.
Right. There's smoke alarms on the first floor as well.
There's smoke alarms, but there's no addressable fire alarm system.
No, it's 1,000 square foot A2 occupancy. It's exempt from a fully addressable system per 907 A2.
Okay, let me just jump in. I understand from Susan, our board secretary, that the jurisdiction's fire official is present, and I failed to allow that person to enter their appearance and be sworn. Mr. Aldred, are you present? And I understand if you are, you may need to unmute in order to enter your appearance.
He'll need to hit *6 on his phone.
Well, how do we know he's on, Susan?
I see his phone number, 937-414-5494.
Okay.
Hit *6 on your phone and you should be able to unmute. There we go. You're unmuted. You can speak now.
Okay. Can you hear me now, sir?
Yes. Could you enter your appearance, and I'm going to have you. I'll have you sworn in. I apologize that I didn't include you in the beginning when I called the case.
No problem, sir. My name's Dan Aldred, ALLDRED, Chief Germantown Fire.
Okay. Very good. Okay, Mr. Elliott, you can proceed. Oh wait, no, I didn't administer the oath. My bad. Would you stand? Raise your right hand, Mr. Aldred. Nick, would you administer the oath?
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, very good. Okay, Mr. Elliott.
Thanks, sir. So NFPA 72 defines the fire alarm system. as a system or portion of combination systems, components, circuits arranged to monitor and enunciate the status of fire alarm. All of these definitions that that NFPA 72 gives. In addition, they have a section for detecting devices are all part of the fire alarm system. So I believe it'd be unfair to consider the smoke alarms to not be part of the fire alarm system. NFPA 72, I think, defines it, and further in OBC 907, the smoke alarms are part of the fire alarm section. So for that reason, I believe that we are in compliance and that we do have, by the definition, a fire alarm system, even though it is not addressable. That's not part of the definition. So that's why we are requesting a review and appealing the score, such that since we are in full compliance with this design of having smoke alarms interconnected and hardwired with battery backup, that we have done enough to satisfy a fire alarm system on the R2 occupancy of the second, third floor. Over.
Okay, any further questions of Mr. Elliott by members of the board? There have been some already.
Yeah, I have a question for him. Exactly explain to me what's the difference between what the code requires for a fire alarm system and smoke alarms?
Well, NFPA 72, per their definition, it doesn't seem like there's much of a difference. It's the fire alarm system in NFPA 72 3.3.111, a system or portion of combination systems that consist of components and circuits arranged to monitor and enunciate the status of a fire alarm or supervisory signal initiating devices, and to initiate the appropriate response to those signals. I think that a fire alarm, a smoke alarm or heat detector, or those alarms do satisfy that requirement.
How is a fire alarm system other than the smoke detector and heat detector differ?
I'm sorry, I may misunderstood your question.
So there are no fire alarm systems other than smoke detectors and heat detectors?
Oh, no, not at all. I mean, they're in the definition, it gives in NFPA 72, it gives lists other items of what constitutes what could be a fire alarm system, not to exclude smoke alarms and heat detectors.
Okay, I'm sorry. Other ones I guess would be lights flashing and alarms going off. Would that be a different system?
And notification. And notification.
Yeah. So these are not notifications.
What is proposed, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong here, is just a local smoke detection that's local alarm only.
Okay.
It is, yes.
So in a system, you have different elements of detection, and then you have elements of reporting or not, that detection to a central station or a 911 center, and then you have notification devices like strobes, horn strobes, whatever the case may be. So, I mean, the gentleman's correct in the sense that there is a system, but the first part of that system is several different options for detection. But detection is only part of it. You have to have notification to make it.
I agree, and that is part of the definition, but a smoke alarm does both detect and also alarms.
Right there.
Mr. Chair, it might be time to hear from the building and fire officials at this time. I mean, we can start reading the white between the letters and the words in the definition, but I don't know if that does us any good without the input from the building and fire official.
Mr. Young, you want to start?
Yeah, so it's our belief that in order to get the positive points they need that it would be a complete fire alarm system throughout the entire building with manual pulls, visual and audible notification in accordance with section 907, not just smoke detectors on the second floor and first floor.
Mr. Albrecht?
Yes, sir. We agree totally with the building department. This is an 1845 building that was designed as a mill. And now we're changing it into, it's an A2 on the first, and now we're going second and third floors with occupancy. And we just feel that for the safety of all the occupants, we have a fire alarm system in place. Thank you.
Okay. Questions of members of the board of either our CBO or the fire official? Okay. Mr. Elliott, do you have any comment at this point in time?
Yes, I just want to point out that, again, this, per the design, it would be in full compliance with the fire alarm system and detection system of OBC 907, the way that it is designed now. It would almost seem weird to request a variance for something that is in compliance. Over.
I believe that it's in compliance is your opinion as you read the code, and that's why you're here.
Right, it's an interpretation. I get that. Okay, let's I'll just let Mr. Elliott have the final word for a minute, but let's hear from members of the board, their thoughts and their comments.
Well, I mean, Mr. Chair, this is Chip Welch. I'm of the opinion that if you're going to have an A2 with R2 above it, you've got to have a system that notifies everybody throughout the structure and that notifies a central station. So no, I don't think that just merely having local smoke alarms in the building, even if they're tied together, is sufficient or meets the intent of the code.
Okay.
Especially considering where this should be a sprinkler building, but we're using Chapter 34 to get around that. And I understand that. I'm not disputing that, but I don't think that a fully monitored alarm system is an unreasonable alternative to what should be required of sprinklers.
Paul?
Yeah, I would agree with the building and fire officials on their interpretation of that section of the code. I have used Chapter 34 many times. This board, in fact, uses one of the provisions of Chapter 34 when we grant a variance for sprinkler systems that includes a fully addressable fire alarm system, including all detection, notification, horns, strobes throughout the entire structure, including all concealed areas, as a condition of variance for sprinklers. So I don't think it's an unreasonable requirement to I mean, that's what's required by code. And I think the interpretation provided by the architect, I think is just incorrect in this particular instance. So
Mr. Elliott, Mr. Began almost read verbatim a relatively standard condition that we impose, just so you know that. Neil, where are you on this?
I too agree with the fire and building official and the two other colleagues that have previously spoken. I believe it should be a full-blown fire alarm system.
And Brad, not to leave you out here.
Well, yeah, I mean, the weight of the evidence for safety purposes seems to fall on having a complete system, which is defined by a member of the fire official and the city's fire official and the building official. So, you know, if we're going to err on the side of safety, I think that's where we would go, is a fully alarmed system by their definition of it.
Okay, Mr. Elliott, it sounds like the board's inclined to uphold the adjudication order and is in agreement with the interpretation of the code that's been determined to be applicable by the building department. That being said, I'll give you the last word.
I just would like to see the code reference requiring this building as it stands to that is required a full-blown fire alarm system throughout.
What I would suggest, Andrew, is when the Chapter 34 says a fire alarm system in accordance with Section 907, you can't just look at a part of the building. You can't just say, hey, we're only changing the second floor and we need to just be in compliance on the second floor. Fully in compliance with 907 means you need to take a step back and look at the entire building and do a code analysis on the entire building and then apply 907 requirements, of which you would find then that a fully addressable fire alarm system would be required when you have a mixed use, unseparated situation like this. So I think, again, I think it's just from what you're explaining, the way that you're looking at this is you can't just take in a vacuum, oh, we're going to put a couple apartments up here and that's only what we're changing. We don't have to look at the whole building. When you talk about life safety and Chapter 34, it's the entirety of the building that has to be included in your evaluation.
Probably in part due to first response, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Again, Mr. Elliott, if I'm not sure that that's satisfactory, but I think we're to a point where this board's inclined to move forward with its deliberation. But anything further before we do that?
Nothing more to add.
Okay. I would entertain a motion.
Yes, Mr. Chair, for Board of Building Appeals case number 20-0128. The appellant is Edward and Allison Brait for the premises 313 South Main Street, Germantown, Ohio 45327. The appellee is Scott Young, building official for the City of Germantown Building Department, and adjudication order number 2020-01. I move to uphold the adjudication order.
Okay, that motion's been duly made. Is there a second?
I'll second, Mr. Chair. Chip Welch.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, the adjudication order is upheld unanimously. That would conclude the Germantown case, subject to anything further by Mr. Young or Mr. Aldred or Mr. Elliott. Hearing none, okay, that case is adjourned, which concludes, we'll stay on the record, and people can jump off if they want, but that concludes our active docket. Today, we had a continuance this morning of, someone might need to mute, of case number 20-0110. That was a Columbus matter dealing with the premises at 4545 Fisher Road in this jurisdiction. That was continued. And then yesterday, Susan indicated to us that the Canton Fire case 20-0114 that dealt with the Athens restaurant in that jurisdiction has been withdrawn, presumably in compliance with the citation or whatever the case may be. So that concludes our docket. I forgot, did we resolve to pay ourselves from the 16th yesterday?
Yes.
Okay. So We don't have any minutes to approve. We did that. So is there a motion to approve compensation for ourselves for our preparation and our attendance today?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chair. Neil.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we stand to be compensated for November 17th. Susan, has there been any new business that we should consider? It's not on our agenda, but if anything pop up here recently that we need to discuss?
No, I don't have anything.
Hearing nothing else and subject to our next meeting will be Friday, December 4th, 2020 at 8:30. Again, will be done virtually through Microsoft Teams as a live event. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we stand adjourned. Nick, thank you very much for your time and efforts, and we can sign off.
Sounds
Okay.
good. We're off the record.
Bye all.
Aye.